Hello, my zealots. I'm Joshua coming at you today. Hey, what's going on? So, some cool things are happening in my life. Um, I have a beautiful woman in my life, and she's amazing. She lives far away from me, though, but she is definitely interested in being with me on a more permanent scale. Um, and there is also another woman that is interested in being with me on a more permanent basis. So I thought we should talk about today is polygamy. Since it is pertinent to my life at this particular moment and junction, I thought that probably it'd be nice to have a good refresher course on it. Now, a lot of people don't really the Bible actually supports polygamy. And there are several verses in the Bible that support it. And I thought I would go through them and over them. But first, we should probably go into a little bit of detail, make sure the chat is working. That way people can post and add stuff or ask questions or feel free to add whatever you want whenever you want. But anyway, uh the biggest complaint that people have is that we in modern society adore monogamy. And though monogamy is a thing that is in the Bible, polygamy is also a thing that is in the Bible, and neither of those things are condemned. In fact, there are instances in the Bible, which I didn't do research on these. So frustrating. But anyway, there is in verses in the Bible where Jesus Christ talks about him being the bridegroom with 10. Oh, sorry. Him being the bridegroom with 10 virgins. And those 10 virgins go off to see the bridegroom. Well, how is 10 virgins going to go see a bridegroom? Well, because he's marrying 10 virgins. That's how it works. And this is in the New Testament. It also talks about God being the father, the talks about God being the husband of two wives, Judah and Israel, and how they're both horrible wives. But the point is that God sees himself as a polygamist. So not only does Jesus see himself as a polygamist, spiritually speaking, God sees himself as a polygamist, spiritually speaking. Um, but there is also verses in the Old Testament that talk specifically about polygamy, and I thought I'd go through them with you. The first, I was almost late today because I was doing research on this, and I got sucked into the research and forgot about time. But we're going to go into. So before we get started, I know that there is, um, uh, the Bible does allow for men to not be married at all. The Bible also does allow for men to have one wife. That is completely legit. But the Bible also does allow for men to have multiple wives beyond that. However, there is a limit. It says that a husband cannot multiply his wives. That's specifically a commandment for a king, but I think that's also for somebody that's super rich. You're not supposed to multiply your wives. You can rabah your wives, but you cannot. What is it? There's two different terms. One is add to. You can add to your wives, but you cannot multiply your wives. Rabah and I can't remember the other one. It's Rabah and Yosef. That's it. Rabah and Yosef, and I can't remember which is which. But anyway, they're two different words, and they're used in two different contexts. But anyway, I digress. I'm not trying to get into all that. But the point is that you can add two wives, you just can't multiply your wives. And in fact, it talks about it in Isaiah 4, I believe it is Isaiah 4, where it says, 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will wear our own apparel, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel, just let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. So technically the limit of wives should be around 7. Any more than that, it's really not necessary. Now that's really, however, they calculate wives and concubines separately, because Well, there's also different types of concubines. Let's get into this. Okay, so let's go into Exodus 21:10. Okay, in Exodus 21:10, this is the standard for what polygamy is. 21 Exodus 21:10. In Exodus 21:10, it says this. It says, if he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. And if he do these three unto her, then she shall go out free without money. So basically, in the New Testament, Jesus Christ forbids divorce except for the purpose of fornication. So man cannot set her free at all, unless she sleeps with somebody else. So what this means is that if a husband has a wife, he has to give her food, he has to give her babies, which is your duty of marriage. You have to provide their babies, and you can't avoid pregnancy. And then food, babies, and food, shelter, and duty of marriage. Yeah. So you also need to provide shelter. All right, which is clothing and proper, covering, protection from the elements, basically. Also, to stay kind of on the same track, um, according to the Bible, sex is marriage, and it specifically stated so in Exodus 22:16. It says, and if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. So even from the Old Testament perspective, sex is marriage. And it even says so in the New Testament. It says, if a man lie with a harlot, those two shall be one flesh. So yeah, sex from the biblical perspective is marriage. If you have sex, you're married. You have to stay committed for life. It's just how it works. All right, so sex is marriage. And then so now there is a difference in the Bible between so we have three different concepts we're going to be working with. There's going to be a concubine, a wife, and then a spiritual concubine. So there's a physical concubine, a wife, and a spiritual concubine. However, so in the minds of humans, there's a difference between a wife and a concubine. But in the eyes of God, there's no difference between a wife or a concubine. God sees them exactly the same. However, there is a spiritual concubine which God sees differently than he sees as the physical concubine. So God sees a physical concubine and a wife as the same thing, and I'm about to prove it. And then there's the spiritual concubine, which is a completely separate thing that God sees completely differently. All right. So if we go into First Samuel 25:42. 1 Samuel, if I can find it. Oh, there we are. Almost past it. All right. So in 2 Samuel 12:8, it states, welcome to the live stream. If at any point you have any questions, feel free to answer. We are talking about polygamy today, but you can ask any question about any subject material that you want to talk about, and we will change topics and talk to you about it. But today we're talking specifically about polygamy, and like seriously, your topic is more important than my topic. This is what's important to me right now, but I'd rather talk about what you need to talk about. And I gave God is talking to his prophet, and the prophet is talking to David, and he's saying that because we know that in Exodus it says that a man can have multiple wives, right? So God is talking to this prophet, and that prophet's talking to David, and he's saying, I'm going to put a curse on you. And this is what happened because he did something really, really bad. I'm not going to get into it because it's not really pertinent to the position I'm talking about. But this is what the prophet says to David. And I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wives unto thy bosom. So right here, we see that God gave wives to David as a gift. So God does not see it as evil. If God gave somebody a gift, he does not see it as evil. And it says, if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. So God would have even given more to David if he would have been, if that would not have been an issue. Like he wants to bless David, and to bless David, he wanted to give him wives. Now, um, now there is a prophecy, and this is how we're going to know that God. So God's cool with having multiple wives. He just said so in 2 Samuel 12:8. But in 2 Samuel 11 or 12:11, 2 Samuel 12:11, it says, "Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will rise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes and give them unto your neighbor. And he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of the sun." So God has told him, this is the prophecy, and this is how I'm going to prove that wives and concubines are the same thing in the sight of God. Okay? Because he right here says wives. God is going to take your wives in the sight of men and give them to your neighbor. Okay? So if we move from there and we move into 15:16 of 2 Samuel 15:16. And then it says in 15:16, it says, "And the king went forth, and all his household after him, and and the king left 10 women, which were concubines, to keep his house." So here, David left 10 concubines, just to keep the house. And then, so we know that they are concubines, specifically concubines. And then 16:20. And we go into 16:20, and it says, "Then saith Absalom to Ahithophel, give counsel among you what we shall do. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, go unto your father's concubines, which had left them kept in the house, and all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hand of all that are within thy be strong." So they spread Absalom a tent on the top of the house, and Absalom went into his father's concubines and in the sight of Israel. So right here, the prophecy comes to pass. He sleeps with all the concubines, but from God's perspective, those concubines are wives, right? Just to kind of prove the point. Concubines are wives. Now, there is another kind of concubine, which it talks about in which God actually sees as concubines, because they fall under a different category, and this is when women take a vow of it's Isaiah 4. Let's just get into it. I'm gonna read it to you if I can freaking find it. Isaiah, closing in on it, almost there. Isaiah 4. And in that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. So this is the vow of the concubine. Okay. It doesn't say that that's the vow of the concubine, but I've basically called it the vow of the concubine because it is something different than a wife. And the concubine has always been the thing that is different than the wife, even though from God's perspective, that old concubine and the wife are the same. And we've just proved that this is something different, and it is blessed by God, because these women are trying to overcome their sin. They're trying to overcome their reproach. And the only way they can do that is to take a husband. And this is one of the reasons that women are commanded to be married. They want to get rid of the sin that they've accumulated, because they are willingly being single. They've avoided having a husband, and in order to avoid getting that, and in order to avoid overcoming that sin, they see a righteous man and they need to marry a righteous man, and that righteous man doesn't necessarily want to marry them. They can take the vow of the concubine and say, listen, I will eat my own bread and I'll wear my own apparel. Just take me as your wife, so that way I don't have the sin of being single. And then at that point, the husband or the man has to take her. It's basically like, it's basically like, what is it called? Not well. It's help. It's for the poor. It's there's a term for it and it's just escaping me. Um, but it's willpower, not willpower, goodwill. No, it's anyway. The concept is that you're taking care of the poor, you're taking care of the people that need help. And it's for people that are single or without means or sustenance. If there's a woman that is all alone and she needs somebody and the man refuses to marry her, she can take the vow of the concubine, and he is now obligated as a righteous man of God to take her as a concubine. He's obligated. And he doesn't have to provide food and he doesn't have to provide shelter, but he does have to give her babies. And he has to love her as he loves himself. And that is what he's obligated to do. If he takes the vow of the concubine, he has to give her food, he has to give her babies, and he has to love her. But it's up to her to provide food and shelter. All right. And that's a certain circumstance. So like a man can have is limited to how many wives he has. He can have up to 7 wives. And right here it says he can have up to 7 concubines. And the concubines are not up to him. Okay. A man can take 7 wives and have no concubines, but he can't force a woman. Like a woman, the vow of the concubine is there so that a righteous woman can make sure that she engages with a righteous husband. She doesn't have to take a crappy husband. She's like, okay, there's a righteous man that has a lot of wives. I want to take him as a husband. And if he refuses to take me as his wife, then I can make the vow of the concubine and become a concubine from him, and therefore still have that sin removed from me. So this whole concept of uh, monogamy is really hogwash. I mean, and even if you read it in the New Testament, there is a lot of a lot of people will read like in I think it's in Luke or John where it talks about. Oh, I hope I can find it really quickly because I didn't look it up beforehand. But there is a verse. Oh, here we go. I found it real quickly. Whoever putteth away his wife and marrieth another committeth adultery. Okay. So if I put away my wife and then marry another, I commit adultery. And whoever marrieth her that put away from her husband committeth adultery. Now, there is a truth, a logical truth, is that anything that is positive, anything that is true in the positive is also true in the negative. So if you do not put away your wife, whoever shall putteth away his wife and marrieth another committeth adultery. But if you do not put away your wife and then you marry another, then you do not commit adultery. Whoever putteth away his wife and oh wait, okay, so and then so and then we have the prophets. It was easier. And there was a certain beggar. So then, oh wait. Okay. So it's basically the concept is this. It only says that it is a sin if to marry. It is only a sin to marry your second wife if you put away your first wife. You can have multiple wives as long as you do not divorce one of them. Does that make sense? That is the limitation. And it's put in the positive, which I think is great. Okay, so now so you'll see that. Now there's a lot of people that will bring up like Timothy and Titus and stuff like that. And it says that you should be the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, apt to teach. And I've read those and I'll bring them up real quick, even though they're in my blacked out section of the Bible, which means that they have no biblical linkage. So they don't really, since they're not a part of biblical canon, I don't really accept, like, they're not really important to me, but we'll read it. And it says that it is a true saying that if a man desireth his office. Now remember, this is out of Timothy, and I don't really consider Timothy biblical canon because it wasn't written by Paul. And if it's not written by Paul, it can't be part of biblical canon because there's no prophetic linkage. But anyway, I'll still read it anyway because a lot of people love to bring this verse up in support of their monogamy. Monogamy. And it says, it is a true saying, if a man desireth the office of a bishop, he desireth good work. A bishop must then be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober. Did you hear it? A husband of one wife. Well, that would be great if that's exactly what it said. But however, in the Greek, it actually says something a little bit different. The word is the bishop must then be blameless, the husband of Mia wife. Mia, there's a difference. Okay, so if I said, let's say I read this and I said, instead of one, I put first. And it says, the husband must then be blameless, the husband of first wife, of a first wife. Okay, the husband of a first wife. A bishop must then be blameless, the husband of a first wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. And that gives it a whole different meaning than one. First versus one. They have similar meanings, but they mean completely different things in the context of this sentence. Because the word Mia is more properly translated as first. The word heis is singularly one. And guess what word is in this verse? It is a true saying that a man desires the office of a bishop, he desireth good work. A bishop must then be blameless, the husband of Mia wife, a first wife. So that is their favorite verse, and that's really the only thing that they can even scrounge together that would support their doctrine. And so the monogamists, I say, that's the only verse that the monogamists can scramble together, and that's the only way they can support their doctrine. Um, However, that's not even biblical canon, and it's just a translational issue. It's not really a real issue. The reason I'm bringing this up to you is that our world is crooked, it is messed up, and it's corrupt. The Bible, it reads completely differently when you open up your eyes and throw away the garbage that you've been taught your entire life. Women are commanded to be married. Your desire shall be to your husband, and he shall rule over you. It is like the first commandment given to women. I'm like, you should probably obey it. And if you have a hard time finding a righteous man, you need to be able to engage in polygamy to make sure that you get a righteous man, because righteous men are more rare than righteous women. So yeah, I mean, I'm putting this out here because I feel like it is a common misconception that the people of this world need monogamy, and there can't be polygamy. Polygamy is evil, and monogamy is righteous. But in reality, it's monogamy that's evil, because it restricts how many babies a man can have. A man is supposed to, and in our world, it's like evil to procreate. Like you should only be having one or two children, which is not positive population growth. It is evil to have positive population growth. I'm like, no, it just means that all the wrong people are breeding. It's never a bad thing to have more children. Just survival of the, even if you believe in the whole like evolution thing, survival of the fittest. You want as many offspring as possible because you have more chances of survival. So anyway, I just want to put that out there. It's important to know these things. It's important to know exactly what the Bible says. And I mean, I didn't even get into the point where God calls himself a polygamist and Jesus Christ references himself as a polygamist with the 10 virgins. Yeah, so men can have multiple wives, women can have one husband. And there is a difference between a concubine and a wife, but there's not in the way that most people think. So I'm going to stop this here. I think that's majority of the things I needed to talk about on that subject. If you have any further questions, I'm going to cut it out here. If you have any further comments, you want to comment on this, bring it up, put it in the comment section. I answer every single comment that's posted in the comment section. Feel free to leave one. I love God because I love virtue, justice, and salvation. Have a blessed day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.